Today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. I can't get you the actual updated news for the week because I'm going to be going on vacation. Instead, I put together a little bit of a compilation of videos from YouTube by just searching false leftist arguments. All of these a little bit crazy. I'll give you that warning. I have seen these before, but that's a long story. So, you will be getting my initial reaction though. If you want to see the actual pain on my face, because trust me, there will be, go check this out on YouTube if you are not watching it already. I'll leave a link in the description. You're listening to Right Side of the Road. Okay, yeah, there's been a lot going on. Right now, TV on in the background. I apologize if you can hear that. Let's first address probably your first concerns. Yes, my hair is not done. In the wise words of Amazon, we understand your concerns and are working to fix the issue. Also, yeah, so I'm going to be on vacation when this is actually coming out. So you are saying a pre-recorded thing. I apologize. This has worked, or not worked, for 3 times already, so I have seen these before, but I can't remember them all because it's always at the end of the day and I get tired, so let's start. I believe I have 3 videos that are just cut in different ways so that I can actually stop and give you answers to what they are saying. They give answers, but they're not correct ones.
Everyone depends on hospitals, roads, police and schools. But they're expensive, and governments across the world are feeling the pinch.
Okay, I immediately regret because I accidentally turned the volume up way too high. So, British accents are great, but that was blasting in my ears. Also, governments don't need to be feeling the pinch. They don't need to be spending that much on funding for all of these things in that case. They should be independent companies doing them, or local doctors, or private schools, things like that. And also, government spending has kind of been not great, so they're feeling the pinch, most likely because of a lot of other different things, because they're blowing out the spending in plenty of different other areas.
So how can we continue in the future to afford good quality public services?
We don't need to afford good quality public services. They don't need to be all public services. This should be a more capitalistic society where it is run off of capitalistic businesses.
Why has pressure on public services increased? Populations are aging. As the number of retirees grows, working people are going to have to pay more taxes to support them.
Okay, I feel like this was an underlying argument in this video from the other times I watched it. Other people don't need to be supporting these retirees. I think if you made terrible choices, that's your fault. 401ks exist, okay? Invest in what you can so that you can be prepared for your own retirement. We don't need to be doing all of these crazy absurd things and raising taxes for the next generation, because this creates an endless cycle. If you get taxed heavily, you can't invest in 401ks. So then you have to tax the next generation heavily so that they can invest in 401ks. So it ends up becoming an endless spiral, so we have to just cut it off at some point.
And as healthcare technology improves, the cost of healthcare is also going to rise.
If this technology is improving, we should wait to implement it until it's improved enough that we can make it mainstream and cheaper. Think the Industrial Revolution. At the very beginning, a lot of the new technology was pretty expensive, but we created different things. In the 1920s, there was the assembly line that made cars more mainstream. Wait until this technology actually becomes good enough that we can make it the same price.
But where to find the cash? Basically, governments can tax 3 things: income, consumption, or wealth.
Okay, so your income is the main thing that's being taxed right now. Consumption, any of those sales taxes, and wealth, I think I remember they get into that way more than they should. We really shouldn't be taxing wealth.
It's not your imagination. Income taxes really have been increasing over the past 50 years. The evidence shows that taxes on income, including corporation tax, discourage people from working.
This is definitely true. What also makes it worse is when you increase taxes on income depending on how much wealth you have, how much income you get, sorry. So if you I make this analogy all the time. If you get $100 and the tax on $100 is 10%, which seems absurd, you'll end up with $90. If you get $200 and they raise that tax up to 20%, you're going to end up with only $180. If my math is correct, you're only going to end up with $160. Apologies about that. You're going to end up with $160. So your incentive to actually make good choices and grow your business just continually lowers. So people don't want to work in the first place because they have income tax, but then they also don't want to work harder because when they work harder, they're just going to get taxed more.
Countries with low income taxes, such as the UK, tend to have stronger economic growth.
So yes, countries with lower income tax will have stronger economic growth. That also depends on the government being able to spend wisely without taxing people just so that they can get their crazy bills across.
Second, consumption. This is things like sales tax in America or value-added tax on purchases in Europe. One problem with consumption taxes is that they hit poorer people hardest, who spend more of their income on day-to-day expenses.
This is true, and just to throw it out there, taxation is theft in any way, shape, or form. But also, this is true. Consumption taxes, especially when they are raised a lot, they affect poor people the hardest because they are the ones buying more day-to-day items, so they have a lot more consumption taxes every time they buy something.
Third, we have wealth taxes. This could be a better idea than taxing income or consumption. This is partly because it places a higher levy on the things that rich people have, such as property and investments.
Okay, again, I regret that my volume keeps spiking, so I hear this guy's British voice loud and clear in my ears. It is true that the wealth taxes do that. It is not true that wealth taxes might be a better option. The problem here is you're going to keep getting taxed. Also, investments in property maybe, but investments is really anyone who can afford to do so, which I'm 12, I could invest a very small amount of money into anything. Anyone who is smart enough to actually invest, who makes smart decisions with their life, can invest. That is not something exclusive to rich people. But the problem with wealth taxes, I will probably get to in a second.
Some economists advocate something called a land value tax. And this is basically where you tax the value of plots of land. And this could raise a lot of money.
Okay, I don't care if this can solve world hunger. We don't need to be doing this. Governments need to spend wisely so that we don't have to resort to things like this. Our debt right now in the United States is at like $29 trillion. And that's because our government has been spending insane amounts of money on insane things that we don't need. So if they can spend wisely, we don't need to do this. Also, the problem with wealth taxes is they're just going to keep taxing you until your income eventually is given entirely to the government. So say you make your amount of money for that year. I don't know, let's go to the $100 again. And you get taxed and you pay your taxes on income and you set that aside and then you buy things with it. Technically, you buy things with it first and then you pay. But your income has still been taxed. So you set that aside and it becomes wealth with whatever you purchase with it. That's your property. So it doesn't have to be taxed. Again, you will continually do this process. It will repeat every year that you make money. If they keep taxing your wealth, you're just going to set aside your income into wealth and it's going to still be taxed. So eventually, at some point, your income is just going to keep going to the government.
A land value tax has very few unintentional bad consequences.
Okay, so I think there are some bad consequences. Like, I don't know, disincentivizing becoming rich, meaning that our economy isn't going to grow. So that is a bad consequence. I mean, debatably, that's a bad consequence. But then unintentional. So do you mean you're intentionally doing this? You don't want anyone to become rich? Which, I mean, this video could probably be just absolutely targeting the rich people. This is a very, very socialist, communist kind of view here. Let's continue.
The problem is that taxing wealth is not politically easy. Homeowners, for instance, are going to be furious if they're asked to pay higher property taxes.
Yeah, any homeowner who has a rational brain. Okay? Homeowners don't need to be paying property taxes like this. Again, they used their income to buy the house. They don't need their income taxed again. The taxing was bad enough the first time if we keep raising it. We don't need to raise these taxes again.
But if people want good government services, it's going to need money. Taxes on wealth are always unpopular, but sooner or later, governments are going to have to bite the bullet.
Great conclusion to that, yeah. Sooner or later, this is only going to happen if our governments keep being stupid. If we want to keep electing Democrats and they're going to keep blowing out our spending and trying to raise the debt ceiling so they can do it again, then we're going to have to do these wealth taxes. I don't like it, but we're going to have to so that our government can keep spending. We need to find a way to stop this. Probably when the Republicans hopefully take the House and the Senate in 2022. We need to stop this because the government doesn't need to be doing this. Okay, that was the end of that video. Let's see what the next one is.
The COVID-19 vaccine is extremely safe for our children. We have a number of studies that represent that.
Okay, good. Vaccine one. I want to start off by saying I believe your claim is false and that it is not as safe as you think. Feel free to take it. It's your personal risk assessment. It is not a risk I'm going to be taking anytime soon. Secondly, what studies? Can you give me the several studies that you were talking about? Because when the FDA gave clearance for this vaccine, they highlighted their one study. I repeat, one study with a very small group of kids. So we don't have a very good overall summary of what this does to kids because we had one study with a very small group of kids. Let's move on.
We've had a number of children already receive the vaccines and have been able to monitor those children closely, and we feel very confident this is a safe and effective vaccine.
I don't care what you think, lady. I just met you now. I don't care if you feel confident. I don't care if you feel scared. This is a personal risk assessment for every kid. The kids don't usually get to choose. Same thing with a lot of leftist movements. But this is a risk assessment that the parents and probably the kids need to actually make. It isn't up to you to just state these things out into the open.
I think it's important to remember we had a wealth of information about mRNA vaccines already under our belt before the pandemic started. So this helps.
Okay, so we had a wealth of information about other mRNA vaccines for other different diseases or viruses. So we can't just kind of use that as a one-size-fits-all. Why do you... That's like saying, we're developing a new type of chicken nuggets, and by taking this from hamburgers, we can just make this. So if we just blend up these hamburgers, we can cook them and make chicken nuggets. I don't even understand these people's points anymore. Let's continue.
This is an example as well of how we get everybody, all hands on deck, everyone working as hard as they can to get a really important vaccine available for our patients. A lot of the bureaucratic red tape, some of the timelines that we normally see were just eliminated because we knew this was so important.
Okay, that is the problem. These timelines shouldn't be eliminated no matter what, especially for kids. With the adults, I can see making things a little bit faster because adults were dying a lot more than kids. With kids, I think it's like 2,000, 3,000 in the United States who have died, and that's including people with bioimmune disorders. Kids without bioimmune disorders in the United States that have died, the number is between 10 and 20, according to Johns Hopkins University. So we didn't need to speed up this timeline for kids. It's worse to speed up this timeline because then we don't know the side effects.
The parts of the process that are truly important not to cut corners were certainly done exactly the way they needed to be. The timelines to administer the vaccines, to follow the side effects afterwards, to analyze that data, all that was done extremely appropriately. There were no corners cut.
Okay, so you just told me that corners were cut, and now you're telling me that there were no corners cut. So I'd like you to choose one before you continue talking. And second of all, were these the regular timelines? My pediatrician won't give a kid a vaccine until it's been researched side effects for 10 years or more. So I don't know what timeline you're operating by, but that is not the standard timeline, nor should it be.
The COVID-19 vaccine in a lot of ways is no different than our other vaccines we have available. It's administered in the same way, either in the arm or in the leg, depending on the age of the child. The doses are appropriate for the age of the child as well.
Okay, that's not how we should be drawing similarities. You can't say the vaccine is similar because we administer it by the arm. That's like, let's go with the food analogy again. That's like saying that broccoli and ice cream are pretty much the same because we both eat them. Well, kids who eat vegetables eat them.
There's no special follow-up that has to happen after receiving a COVID-19 vaccine, and our side effects are quite similar to other vaccines, including fever, muscle aches, but most likely pain, redness, and swelling at the injection site.
Okay, I think it should be alarming how happily she says these things. Like, there's no change in her face. She's like still smiling, although her eyes aren't smiling, but you see that a lot with politicians. She's like, pain, swelling, redness. It's just going to be great for you. I think those aren't the only side effects, but I think this might be mentioned later.
Because a vaccine is extremely safe, extremely effective, we do feel that benefit greatly outweighs any potential risk to the vaccine, which really there are very minimal risks, if any, and the ones that we have noticed are things that we can take care of in the outpatient setting very easily.
You know, minimal risks like heart problems that could lead to death later in life. Minimal risks. But also, she didn't give a contestable statement. That statement, because the vaccines are so safe and so effective, that false statement, but also that requires that the vaccines have to be effective for the rest of the sentence to be true, meaning that second half of what she just said is completely false, because they are safe for a relative majority of the kids, I guess, but there are a pretty common number of side effects.
The risks of actually getting COVID-19 for our patients are quite significant. We see things like inflammation of the heart, chronic lung problems. Again, patients may need to be hospitalized and even can die again from COVID-19 infection. So the risk of actual infection are much higher than any risk with a vaccine.
Okay, can we do like vice versa there? So, every time she says COVID-19, put the vaccine instead of that. And then every time she says COVID-19, the vaccine, that would be COVID-19, because that would be a pretty true statement. The lung problems, heart problems from the vaccine are pretty common, especially among kids, especially among young men. Then with getting COVID, the risks are almost non-existent, especially for kids without bioimmune disorders. For kids with bioimmune disorders, I can see a different risk assessment for getting the vaccine, but for the majority of kids, this is not what should be happening. Okay, guys, sadly, we have reached the end of part 1 of this. Again, I'm going to be gone next week as well, so you will have another one of this delightful treat. Since I'm kind of recording these back-to-back, I'm not going to know how the first episode went. Please like, subscribe, share this video. I really hope you enjoyed this. This is probably going to be an editing nightmare for myself, so please just like it if you can. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time on Right Side of the Road.